Okay, so just to recap real quick, if you've watched the video that I put up, you can see we're talking about macroeconomics, and macroeconomics are about the way that the government influences our economy. The reason why this is important, for obvious reasons, for where we are right now, is that our economy is being greatly influenced by the federal government and with our cooperation. So you can see how this macroeconomic stuff works. One of the challenges, if you think about the three things that are involved, the GDP, unemployment, and inflation, unemployment is the big one that's hitting us right now because a lot of people are at home, they're not working, businesses have had to lay off workers or furlough people. And so one of the things that we're dealing with is that the government is trying to figure out whether they should do some kind of a some kind of rescue package. I've been doing this all day. Um, so the rescue package that's going on right now, I think we talked about it a little bit before, was between $1 and $2 trillion. They're, arguing back and forth about what's going to be in it and so on. The whole purpose of that is to try to um, kind of bind the economy over until we get through this for the next 3 weeks probably, and actually it'd be the next anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months. Um, you've already began to see in Washington right now, if you've been watching the news, that they're trying to figure out when they're going to get the economy started back up. Mainly because that's a critical issue for us being able to continue to make money, to keep the companies in business that can help us fight this thing. So I saw an interview with the CEO of Ford. Ford is actually 3D printing respirator masks and developing respirator machines along with a couple of other companies. So one of the things that's going on is that the government is trying to move some money over to a sector of the economy that can help us get out of this situation. Ford is an example. 3M is another one. There's a whole slew of them that are going on. So macroeconomics deals with the government's interaction with these particular things. Microeconomics, which we'll deal with in the next section, really deals with what happens. It's the transactions that you and I do every day. When you go to the grocery store and buy food, you go to the gas station, buy gasoline for your car, and then you go get a soda inside or whatever. The deal then is that that's microeconomics. That's the stuff that happens at the micro level, as it were, at the smaller level. So that has a profound effect on the economy, but government can't really easily affect those transactions. But they can have policies that really affect things at the macro level, so unemployment and so on. One of the things I want to point out to you is that in the last recession that we dealt with, one of the challenges that we had is we had a lot of structural unemployment, and it was more than we really should have had. That structural, as you saw in the video, structural unemployment is different than cyclical unemployment, which can be damaging to the economy. But one of the things that we deal with is that in the recession that we had about 10 years ago, well, not even that, I guess probably in the 2014, 15, one of the problems we had is that people just simply stopped looking for work. And so they weren't counted in the unemployment numbers. And if the government can't track those numbers and people aren't looking for work, then the challenge, of course, is that because they are not looking for work, they're not counted in those numbers, and they can't help them. There's no unemployment insurance that they're taking. There's no economic activity that they can be involved with, so they can't get finances to them so that they could then turn it back into the economy. It's kind of what our government's trying to do. They're kind of bickering back and forth about all of the details, but both Democrats and Republicans are really trying to get finances into the hands of Americans, taxpayers most specifically, and not wealthy ones at that. They're trying to get somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000 into each of their hands in such manner that they would be able to take that money and go out into the economy. So they're trying to kind of, it's almost like priming the pump. It's I don't know if those of you who understand what priming the pump means. Sometimes you have to put water into the pump to get it to pump the stuff out. You can't just it won't pump air when it's supposed to pump water. And so to get it started, you have to pour water and fill up the pipe. That's kind of what the government's trying to do at this point here. It's called priming the pumps. Some economists thinks that it works. Others do not. The problem, of course, is that we're going to add to the deficit severely, and our debt is going to go through the roof in this situation, regardless of where this is at. So that becomes a problem, because then that debt becomes again, you talk about structural things. It becomes a structural part of our society. Okay, so here's the assignment that you got. I want you to read through chapter 10, section 2. Do the review. It's a very short part here. It's a very short thing. They don't really deal in this book well with economics. That's why, with macroeconomics, that's why I included a video that I think does a pretty good job of explaining where things are. Suffice to say this, that although there are three basic things that the government tries to take care of with unemployment, GDP, and yeah, and I forgot what it was. Sitting here thinking, it slipped my mind. But those aren't the only things that macroeconomics include. So you can do a little bit of research, do some checking on Google, do some YouTube stuff. There is a slew of stuff that you can look into for economics that talk about how macroeconomics is tracked and worked here in the United States. And one of the things I think is real important to understand is that the kind of numbers that we track and the way that we track micro or macro economics in this case is significantly different than what gets tracked in England and in Holland and in Japan and so on and so forth. I've lived in 3 or 4 of those countries. The way they track their economics is different than the way we do it. They don't spend as much time looking at unemployment as we do. Most of their societies have been around, some of them for 1,000 years or so. I mean, England and Holland have been around for 1,000 years at least, as countries. And so this concept of macroeconomics, although from our perspective in the United States, we didn't really start talking about it until the 1930s. Other countries have been talking about these kinds of things for a long time, and so I remember having some economic conversations with some folks in Holland when I lived there, and they've been tracking economics, macroeconomics in this style for a long period of time. But unemployment was never one of the ones that they tracked. Trade and the way those things. Remember that engine that they were talking about? How there was consumer spending and business spending and government spending, and then there was trade. Well, trade was the major way in which most other countries, other than the United States, at least since the 30s, really tracked their macroeconomic stuff. The government was in charge of making sure that those goods and services got outside of their borders, and that they were not only able to spend that money so that the businesses did well, but they got to tax. I mean, they get to kind of tax the stuff twice, because they tax it when it's made, they tax it as it goes across the border. And so exports have taxes, imports have tax, but the export tax was also one of the ways that they did it. So how taxes and how stuff crosses borders has a kind of a profound effect on how macroeconomics is affected in a country. So you're going to see as you read through here that things are a little bit different perhaps in other countries, and if you do some research, you'll find out that people in the Middle East and in the Far East, they don't track things macroeconomically in the same manner that we do. And that's one of the reasons why the trade agreements, when we go to China, when we go to South Korea and Japan and Indonesia and Taiwan, we go to those places and we do, when we're trying to do things, we're speaking to them on our terms concerning the agreements that we make. And if we make an agreement completely set to a set of standards that's consistent with our way of looking and our way of doing things, then we're liable to find ourselves in a problematic situation with that country, because we'll be talking from their perspective, we'll be talking gibberish, because our economic language is different than theirs. So be careful when you start hearing all of this stuff about how the TARP is bad and this is going. Watch what you pay attention to, because macroeconomics has as much of a language to it as anything else. And when you talk to Japan or South Korea or India or China or in places in Africa, even in Europe, what they talk about from a macroeconomic point of view, specifically when it comes to trade, oftentimes is like two people, one speaking English and the other speaking French, and they don't know each other's language. And so they've got to spend time to learn enough of one another's language to figure out how to put an agreement together. Watch the video, do this stuff, let me know. I'll be online on Wednesday until noon, certainly, and Thursday until noon, certainly. Then working on the final assignments and so on that we'll be doing for the week here. So good to spend a little time with you this afternoon. Watch the videos, do the assignments, keep up as best you can, keep up, so that we can stay on top of this. We can do this, guys. There is no reason for us to be afraid. We have got this covered. We can make it happen. I told some of my other classes I've been homeschooling for 30 years. And in the middle of that, I was teaching college and pastoring churches and building companies and everything. So, life is school. School is life. And so let's just take example. Let's just take advantage of that circumstance for our learning, because we have to live in the world that we learn from. So this is a good opportunity to do that. All right, good to talk to you. I'll turn you loose. I beat 15 minutes, which is what I was trying to do. So watch these videos, watch the other one too, and then I'll talk to you online. Bye.